this conversation.
When we asked you what the topic should be, you chose the new anti-Semitism.
That's right.
Now, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs famously said that anti-Semitism is like a cancer. It mutates into one form of another.
That's right.
And as a good yeshiva boy, you know the Torah tells us that the war against Amalek, against evil, will go on from generation to generation. And in 2 weeks, we have the holiday of Purim that we're going to remember Haman, who tried to annihilate the Jewish people 2,500 years ago.
So would you have it too far?
There you go. So please, if you could elaborate on what you mean when you say we're facing a new anti-Semitism. What is new?
Anti-Semitism is as old as recorded history and maybe older than that. But anti-Semitism is brilliant, like viruses. It mutates. It figures out what the environment is, and then it goes after those elements of the environment that can most contribute to the hatred of anti-Semitism. So if you go back to, for example, the period of the beginning of Christianity, Jews killed Jesus. That was the beginning of anti-Semitism. Then Jews poisoned the wells because there was sickness in Europe. Then Jews were communists. Then Jews were fascists. Then Jews were this, Jews were that. Today, of course, there's a whole new vocabulary, and we've heard talk about that. And Jews are now guilty of the worst sins of the second quarter of the 21st century. The crimes, the sins of genocide, of apartheid, of being privileged, of violating the rules of intersectionality. There's a whole new vocabulary that has emerged, but it's the same. It just uses current language, which makes it very popular among young, impressionable college and university students. I want to start by disagreeing a little bit with the prior panel. I learned a great deal from the prior panel, and I think it's wonderful that we attack the extremists, we arrest those who violate the law, we don't expand the First Amendment beyond what its initial intention was, and we go after the people that this panel said we should go after. But that is not the core of the problem. The core of the problem is mainstream university teaching, all protected by the First Amendment, all protected by academic freedom, and impossible to go after as a law enforcement issue. The bad news is that the current academic canon, what is being taught at major universities, and let me tell you, I know a little about this. I've been in higher education now, you're going to wonder about my statement, 70 years. I started out in college in 1955. I was the president of the student government at Brooklyn College. I was then editor-in-chief of the Yale Law Journal. I then became the youngest professor in the history of Harvard Law School. So I know what I'm talking about when I talk about the academic canon. What is being taught today, not by extremists, but by your children's friends, by your friends' children, by mainstream academics, by Jewish academics, by academics who in shul call themselves Zionists, but out of shul won't defend Israel. What is being taught today on college campuses as part of mainstream courses is the essence of anti-Semitism. Students are learning anti-Semitism in virtually every class, every course, and in every lecture. Today, I'm just going to make a list of things that are going on in American universities today, and they will be familiar to you. And if I continued and read you the whole list, I think we would be going into the next panel. But Jews are accused of having privilege. That's a dirty word, having privilege. Jews are accused of being successful. Oh my God, success? No, we don't want meritocracy in our schools. We want DEI. We want diversity, equity, and inclusion, but certainly not meritocracy. Everything that Jews are good at, we are attacked for. What is the group in America that has most benefited through meritocracy? Obviously, it's been Jews. What is the country in the world that is most benefited by meritocracy? Tiny little country the size of New Jersey with no oil and no resources. That's the country of meritocracy. That startup nation. So privilege, intersectionality, critical race theory, which is uncritical race theory. You can't criticize race theory. DEI, race-based affirmative action, internationalism, relating to the International Criminal Court, the International Court of Justice, the United Nations. Selective anti-nationalism. We hate nationalism, except when it's Palestinian nationalism. That we support. Selective nationalism. Palestinianism, which means that the only rights that are recognized on college campus today are the rights of Palestinian people. You never hear about the Kurds. You never hear about the Tatars. You never hear about the Uyghurs. You never hear about any group. It's only Palestinianism, which is simply another word of describing anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. Orientalism, a phrase concocted by Edward Said at Columbia University. Qatarism. Qatarism, what is that? It's how Qatar is funding so many American universities in ways that are less than visible. Socialism and communism. Let's remember, too, that until the Soviet Union changed on a dime in the early 1960s, when they looked out the window and discovered, wow, Arabs have oil, they have the Suez Canal, Jews have sand and oranges, we're not going to support Israel anymore. That changed on a dime, and suddenly all the communist parties in Europe that were pro-Israel turned against Israel. All the American liberal left groups, even the American Civil Liberties Union, the National Lawyers Guild, all turned on a dime against Israelism. Human rights. I have devoted my life to human rights. Human rights have become today human wrongs. Human rights have been weaponized against Israel, against everything that Israel does. The Civil Liberties Union, National Lawyers Guild, NGOs. We all grew up thinking, wow, NGOs are so wonderful. Virtually every NGO today is anti-Israel. When you look at what happened on October 8th, the most important day in modern Jewish history, October 8th, not October 7th. October 7th was a disaster. It was a one-day horrible disaster. October 8th told us where we really were in the world when Amnesty International at Harvard blamed it all on Israel, and all the left-wing groups around the country blamed everything on Israel before Israel fired a single shot in the Gaza Strip. Student governments. Oh, who's not in favor of student governments? We want people to be able to elect student presidents. Every student government in the country virtually has turned out to be anti-Israel. Left-wing faculty, self-regeneration of how the faculty reinvents itself, Medor Lador, from every generation to every generation. The left-wing, hard left, anti-Zionist, anti-Israel faculty replicates itself and makes it impossible to have any changes. DEI administrations, it goes into high schools. Look what's going on in the private high schools, the elite private high schools in New York, Friends Academy, Dalton, all the schools that we all want to send our children and grandchildren to. They have become the centerpiece of anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism, and they're sending our kids to college with those attitudes. The media, New York Times, CNN, nobody should be surprised at the New York Times. The single most dangerous anti-Jewish publication in modern history. It turned against the Jews during the Holocaust. It turned against the Jews during the establishment of the State of Israel and opposed the establishment of the State of Israel. It is the newspaper of record, and it is a disgrace. CNN, MSNBC, others. Europe. We heard about Europe. Ireland. We all have Irish American friends. Most of our Irish American friends in America are very pro-Israel. You go to Ireland, it is the single most anti-Semitic state in all of Europe, and it didn't start here. It started in the Second World War when the Irish government supported Hitler and wouldn't allow British transports to land in Ireland. And now I want to talk to you for a minute in the most disturbing way about the greatest enemy today that Jews face, the greatest enemy that Israel faces. One word: Jews. Jews. We are our own worst enemy. when we see these arguments by ethnic identity, oh, Chomsky is Jewish, so he can't be an anti-Semite. Finkelstein is Jewish, so he can't be an anti-Semite. No, we're seeing such self-hatred within the Jewish community. We're seeing it in various different forms. Some of it's overt, Finkelstein, all that stuff. The cartoon that was talked about before, written by, of course, a Jewish Danziger, who is overtly anti-Jewish and anti-Israel. We are our greatest enemy. Pogo the cartoon once said, "We have seen the enemy and he is us." I see it all the time. Organizations like Temple Emmanuel in New York, which forbids me from speaking and making a pro-Israel speech, but pays Peter Beinart $25,000 to deny Israel right to exist. The 92nd Street Y, which bans speakers like me and encourages anti-Israel speakers. And these organizations have the imprimatur of the Jewish community. So people say, oh my God, why should we ever invite fill in the blank to speak on college campuses? The Jewish organizations won't even have him. So we have a real problem of our own. And so I'm not going to be as optimistic as the last four speakers. We have survived in the past. That doesn't mean we're going to survive in the future. Our destiny is in our hands. It's not in the hands of some historic compulsion that we will always survive and that the joke will always end with "let's eat." No, we did not survive the Holocaust. We did not survive. We failed the Holocaust. The Jewish community of Europe ended forever, permanently. The Yiddish culture ended permanently. There are remnants of it today on American campuses, in American cities. But the Jewish culture of Europe, one of the greatest cultures in the history of humanity, ended. We lost that fight. And we lost it perhaps in part because of Jewish leadership. Because Jewish leadership, Rabbi Wise wouldn't stand up to Franklin Delano Roosevelt and many other Jews, people who law firms are named after today. Proskauer hated other Jews. So many German Jews in New York wouldn't lift a finger for Jews in the Holocaust. And so for me, the negative message is this. Look, the Talmud says that prophecy ended with the destruction of the Second Temple. I'm not going to argue with that, and I'm not going to claim to be a prophet. But I'm going to tell you there's one easy way of predicting the future. You look at who are the leaders in American colleges and universities today, and you know that 20 years from now, thank God it'll include people like Shabbos Kestenbaum, but it will also include many of the anti-Israel leaders. They will be members of Congress. Kestenbaum will be a minority member of Congress, but the majority will consist of people today who are creating this problem on college campuses. So yes, I can predict the future. If we don't change it, we will see what's going on in elite high schools today, colleges tomorrow, universities, law schools, and medical schools the day after tomorrow, Congress 5 years, 10 years from now, the presidency 20 years from now. We are on a dangerous trajectory. The trends are all going in the wrong direction, and we have an obligation to change that. We must change Jewish leadership, we must change Jewish attitudes, and we must change our priorities. My wife and I made a decision. On October 8th, we have a family fund. We contribute widely to educational, artistic, everything else. We've changed that. Our priorities now are one and only the Jewish people in Israel. I contribute all of my time and all of my money and all of my resources to the Jewish people and to the state of Israel. And I think that many should follow and begin to prioritize. I think you have to prioritize in terms of elections. I'm not going to here make a speech about who I voted for, who I didn't vote for, who I will vote for. But I will tell you that my votes will be determined, will be dependent on my grandmother's old statement. I remember coming back from a game and saying, oh my God, the Brooklyn Dodgers won. And my grandmother says, yeah, but was it good or bad for the Jews? And that's the question that I ask today primarily. Is it good or bad for the Jewish people, for our survival? Is it good or bad for the survival of Israel? The United States will survive. That is for sure, no matter who is in charge. We have a system of checks and balances. It's working. The United States will survive. Israel's survival is not guaranteed. We can look to the Torah. We can look to the Psalms of David. But if we look to the Psalms of David, remember what Hashem told us. Hashem oz li'amo yitain. God will give the Jewish people oz. Hashem yivarech et amo b'shalom. Only through oz, only through strength will the Jewish people survive. We have learned the lesson of history that morality is not enough. We had morality on our side in the 1930s and the 1940s. We did not survive. We have had morality on our side on October 7th. It was a disaster. Yes, strength without morality is no good, but morality without strength is also no good. So I urge all of you to devote all of your resources to strengthening Jewish communities, whether it be the shul in Palm Beach, whether it be Jewish events at places like Harvard and Yale. You can pick and choose which way to prioritize your intellectual, your financial, your physical resources, but we must prioritize Jewish survival. Thank you.